And Gemini's taking notes. All right, Mark, good morning.
Morning.
All right, I thought we could try to just blaze through some definitions or conversations about explaining lean in simple terms, lean continuous improvement in simple terms. And I think you and I both are taking inspiration from a project management influencer we've seen where they challenge themselves to explain complex project management topics in simple terms on tight timelines. So I think it's going to be a learning curve for us. Maybe over time, as we get to the end of this call, we'll hit our rhythm and be more concise. But we just got to start somewhere. So do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
To ask or answer?
To answer.
I'll go first.
You go first? I love that you're always willing to be the guinea pig. So in 1 minute, try to explain the common warning sign or signs that an organization's improvement culture is not performative.
So some signs are, I would say, are stagnation. So stagnation and improvement efforts where you feel like you're not getting lift on work. Another sign would be that you're not collecting the ideas and thoughts and ideas of those closest to the work being performed. Another sign would be, I guess, just how you benchmark to other organizations and their rate of improvement, how well your business is doing, right? So if you get stuck and other organizations are passing you up because they're making better improvements or innovations, that's definitely a sign. I would say those.
Great. I would imagine those are some definitely things organizations are experiencing, and they may be indications that that organization's improvement program is either non-existent or is underperforming.
Yes. How about you? What would be your 1 minute?
All right. So if I was to identify maybe a key warning sign that would help an organization identify that maybe their improvement culture is underperforming would be maybe the experience of the leadership team, not necessarily like executive leaders, but managers and directors. I think when an improvement culture isn't fully present, a lot falls on that group of individuals to own problem solving, and they may be experiencing full plate syndrome and like the concept of the dump and run, where the people they lead and oversee express that frustration is in the workplace or challenges exist in the work, but don't really come to the leadership team with solutions or recommendations, but more of the expectation that you're going to fix this for me. So I think that's one thing that may communicate to the organization that their improvement culture is underperforming.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think I would add one more, that the thought of not having continuous improvement represented at the table at the executive leadership level is probably a signal that it's not being taken that seriously and may not be as effective as it could be.
Oh, I like that you mentioned that, Mark. That I think what I hear you're saying is that the most senior leaders, executive team who set the organization's goals and strategies aren't thinking of improvement as a vehicle or engine or a pathway to achieve those most important goals and strategies. And because it's not top of mind at the highest level, it's probably not top of mind anywhere else.
Yeah, and sometimes there's decision made at that level that can impact your continuous improvement folks or department. So there could be parallel initiatives. There can be like not a good thought process behind how do we roll out change, and that can stifle kind of the good work that maybe the operational excellence team is trying to do.
Mhm.
So that can cause some clash there and hinder the good efforts of your CI.
Yeah. So a lot of what I hear you talking about is the stickiness of this. And I'm going to ask you a question, give you 60 seconds, 1 minute to answer. You and I, we really think it's important to create improvement know-how and extend learning and development to the people who do the work to begin to understand and practice continuous improvement. So those learning and development programs, oftentimes you'll hear them described as like a white belt or yellow belt. Why do those programs struggle to stick? Why don't they stick?
Well, I hope I get to answer the question that you're asking. I think some of the reasons why the training might not stick is maybe because it's not catered or tailored to the type of learning that's appropriate. So many different people learn in many different ways. And if, you're just standing up in front of a cohort of people and we're just didactic and providing a lecture, maybe that's, not getting folks interested. Or maybe if it's just all computer-based training and they get a ton of computer-based training, they might just sign out mentally. So I think you have to tailor the training to stick, right? So and incorporate a bunch of different types of teaching methodologies to help keep the momentum. And you want to make it fun so that people enjoy it and they're encouraged by it and they want to go tell others to engage with it, so that it does have a more sticky or tackiness to it as far as the training goes. Did I answer your question?
I think you definitely hit an important thing in the design of the curriculum. You want it to be multi-modality so that it can cater to a lot of different learning types. You want it to be benchmarked and relevant so that it is aligned with best practices and the emerging trends of the improvement sciences, so that when they walk away, they've got the most current learning that's available. And you want it to be fun and engaging and rememberable. Is it memorable or rememberable?
Memorable?
I think it's memorable. Yeah. If I were to answer that question or add to maybe your list of why continuous improvement training programs don't stick, I think is that sometimes they lack the hands-on practicum. I think that learning it is really, really important. Getting coaching, mentorship, though, from an experienced improvement person to guide you through your very first improvement initiative is a really important step in translating what's learned in the classroom into how it's actually practiced in the real world. So I would add that to your list of things.
And I would add to that is that you have to actually have a system that is practicing it in the real world. So if the training doesn't reflect what is actually happening, the tools that you learn when you get into the real environment probably won't stick because the environment's not utilizing that. So I think ideally is the environment uses it, you train to it, and then you give them some mentorship to kind of give them an on-ramp into the system that is already using it. But if the system's not already using it, it's difficult because then they're going to learn the tools. And then this, even after the mentorship, they have to have something that's going to inspire them to continue to use that, even though their surroundings aren't.
Yeah. They're going to experience that tension of wanting to do their work or improve their work in a continuous improvement fashion, but the system that they operate within is not really set up to support that.
Yeah.
What would be the number one mistake that leaders make when they try to roll out continuous improvement?
I think the number one mistake would be is not engaging all the stakeholders, and describing what's in it for them. Obviously, this is going to make your work better, easier, flow more simply, help you to have great days. If you're at the management level or leadership level, it's going to help you with your desired outcomes as far as safety goes, quality goes, productivity goes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that those are important to convey prior to a rollout, to get the buy-in necessary, because you can't do it by yourself, and create just a really good vision by either, field trips to other organizations that might be practicing it well, or, however you can simulate that environment, maybe starting with a model cell or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's on to something really important is communicating the why behind the what.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of continuous improvement is the projects, the tools, the training, and those can be exciting, but they're just like activities that a team may go through if they don't necessarily have a strong foundation as to why it's important to develop themselves to think in that fashion and to experiment with ideas, because not every idea is going to work. You have to, be in it for the long haul. There are some quick wins, but once those are harvested, the improvement efforts become much more complex, much more challenging. And if you're really not grounded in why you're doing this, it could be easy to give up.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say what is your top number one reason why an organization should make investments in building a continuous improvement culture?
I think for sustainability of the organization. So if you're not, growing and learning consistently as an organization, I think that you're just going to be, like we referenced before, stagnant, and it could put your organization at risk. So the most important thing for us to do as we go from toddlers to adolescents to adults is to learn and continue to develop and continue to grow, so that we become a functioning member of society. I would say the same is true with your continuous improvement department and your organization. So that has to start somewhere, and it has to continue to grow so that your organization is stable and can continue. And I think that's also true not only for continuous improvement, but for innovation within an organization. So you got to really sharpen your continuous improvement skills to then be able to, start looking at innovation. And I think some organizations just don't get there. So you could probably think of some organizations that didn't get to the innovation level and or probably have been phased out because the external environmental factors have phased them out. So staying relative, sustainability, I think, are the big ones.
I think that's a great aha. Is it's not about winning and achieving your goals and objectives for this current year, but it's really about culture shaping and legacy building to establish something relevant and important to customers and the people who serve those customers that endures over time. I think that's probably one of the things that people don't talk about enough when it comes to continuous improvement. They talk about results oriented, outcomes based stuff, which is the measurable outcomes, but really the longest game is to position your organization to better serve customers in whatever dynamic changing way that might be now and into the future, so that you can continue to do so.
Yeah, I agree.
One of the things, I was talking to a friend about a social media post that I wanted to write, really trying to simplify like improvement and what it means to organizations. And he said something as simple as improvement nerds make important numbers go up and to the right. I'm curious, there's many other things that improvement nerds do or even don't do, right? Like maybe we can generate a list here in our conversation with each other about what improvement nerds do and don't do. Again, an improvement nerd is someone who is very passionate about bettering themselves to better others and their organization to fulfill that virtuous cycle. I think was what you just talked about, is that as an organization evolves and positions itself to better serve customers, it becomes more relevant and can continue to challenge the market and innovate and just endure over time. So I think that's a very exciting proposition of what continuous improvement can do. So I want to explore that a little bit with the people who help do that. We call them improvement nerds. So let's generate a list of like the top 3 things an improvement nerd does. And we'll start that with an improvement nerd does this. And then, so we'll generate that list of 3. And then we'll switch over to 3 things the improvement nerd doesn't do. What do you think?
Okay, I got just one. So hopefully 2 more come to me. Because you said improvement nerds help maybe the right metrics go up and to the right. That's fine. I would say improvement nerds help people move up. So it's really about the people and coaching people and their level of understanding of continuous improvement and how they can serve the organization, how they can better their processes around them. So we try to elevate the person and elevate their thinking, elevate their critical thinking, give them the tools they need to apply in the environment around them. So we're helping them move, I would say, up.
I really like that, Mark, and my marketing brain is going along with you that that's so significant. And I would say yes, and maybe we could connect to some of the other work that's happening in the improvement space. I'm thinking of the book Multipliers. And the concept there is when a person feels invested in, supported, and invited to bring the best selves to work along with their ideas, they say that, I feel like I've been multiplied, that I'm able to do more than I ever thought I was possible of doing. So they'll say, I feel like I can give 110% because now they're working in ways that supersede that person's own expectations of themselves. So that, I think that multiplier theory is really important. So I would add to what you're saying and describe it as improvement nerds multiply the impact people can make.
Yeah. Maybe it's the improvement nerds help people to move outwardly. I don't know.
Ooh, oh boy. Okay.
Up but outward. I don't know.
Yes,
For the multiplier effect.
absolutely. Well, okay, so we've got, I'm not really in love with the first one I suggested of improvement nerds make important numbers go up and to the right. I think that's not necessarily aligned with the altruistic nature you and I bring to this work. I think your comment of multiplying people or helping people grow outwardly and in ways they never thought possible is really aligned to our human-centered approach. But let's keep digging and see what else an improvement nerd does. So you have another one in your pocket?
Do you?
I think an improvement nerd embraces ambiguity and practices curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of this is about discovery and navigating and just trusting in a team and their abilities to innovate and improve. Because business challenges, they're going to arise and occur because of multiple different circumstances. And the answer is not always going to be clear. And in that space, an improvement nerd kind of remains really calm and steady and steadfast in that situation and very hopeful that whatever it is they're facing is figure outable, if that's a word. So I think an improvement nerd is one of those individuals that might have a little bit of nerdiness going on and excitement going on when things are really hard to figure out.
Yeah, I like that. So they're almost like a light, shining in a dark environment at times.
And they could have, the catastrophe or the disaster playing out in the back of their mind, but they don't show it. They may feel it, but the confidence and the trust and the excitement outweighs the fear of failing, and they can transfer that energy to the team that they're a part of. They don't have to be the facilitator of that. I mean, improvement nerds don't have to be black belts or continuous improvement practitioners. An improvement nerd can really be anyone who, through their work, is passionate about making an impact and a difference. So I think one way to help make a difference is when things get hard is find a way to look for the good within that challenge and rally people around it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And depending on how dark it becomes, right? I think generally we are prone to be more excited when problems pop up and arise, rather than being fearful or being feeling like the world is ending, because we see the problems as opportunities, and we get to use our skill sets to say, okay, we've been challenged with this. How do we maneuver through it to get to the other side? And that challenge, I think, is what stimulates us as the improvement nerd population.
Absolutely. I think that's very accurate. Okay, so we've got two, because I'm striking out potentially making important numbers go up and to the right. We've talked about building others and multiplying the human impact as what an improvement nerd does. And then we've also here just talked about improvement nerds when challenges arise somewhere within them is excitability starts to build, right? Like they find a way to overcome the fear or the paralysis of the situation and move themselves and teams forward through that situation. Do we have a third one? What else could we maybe think of? And then we'll switch gears and we'll go to what improvement nerds aren't.
I don't know if this is too similar to ones we've talked about, but would it be that multipliers in that we maybe encourage others to do the same? I think just, not only do we teach the concepts and the methods and the structures, but when we do that, I think that there's times where people say, hey, this might be even a career trajectory change for myself, or I like this and I didn't know that I would, and I like it so much that I want to incorporate this into everything that I do going forward. So I know that we talked a little bit about that, but I think that it's, just reflecting back, I think it's really true that once people see this might be one of the things that really give them inspiration and really drive them in their career and vocation going forward.
I think maybe we can describe that as like flipping a switch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reflecting on when I was first exposed to this stuff, and you probably are also, in what you're talking about, reflecting on your first exposure, where once you were exposed to it, it was like someone went in and flipped the switch and a light bulb went on in your head. So maybe improvement nerds go around and flip switches, or we could borrow from the story of the belts already, and we could say they plant seeds, right?
Yeah.
And without an expectation as to what that light bulb moment might do or what that seed might grow into, right? You're doing it because that's just genuinely who you are, is to engage others and put them in a position where they own their own outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And how they show up. So I think I think that's really an interesting idea you have there, Mark. Great. I also think improvement nerds are readers. Readers are leaders and leaders are readers kind of thing. I think that they don't stay still. I think they are wanting to understand the emerging trends of the improvement sciences. For example, I know you've taken a lot of curiosity into brain science, and the challenges someone might face in making improvement when their world is chaotic and they're in a state of stress, right? Like that when you and I certified to become belts, like brain science was not in the practitioner's handbook. Like you really didn't think about the mental load of the team and really how to put them in the right headspace to participate. So, I think improvement nerds are reading up on those things and they're trying to adopt those key principles in the way they practice.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's flip this coin here. Flip this cone. Flip this coin. Okay, what if we were to say an improvement nerd isn't or doesn't? How would we describe what an improvement nerd isn't or doesn't do?
Well, one of the things, if I think of like a black belt, or maybe us coming in as consultants, I don't know if we make numbers go up and to the right in our position. That might be an outcome of what happens. We're hopeful that happens, and we like to see it when that does. I think many will be surprised at how much we don't do. So, and I like to focus on what it is that we don't do a lot. Like, we're not there to move the numbers. We're not there to solve the problems, like, for an organization. We're not there to give the answer. So we're not the teacher's guide. We're not the answer book, but we're there to, obviously, to help others and mentor them to figure out. So we're not being the hero, and we're not just, collecting all the information and learning all the new stuff and keeping that and retaining that to ourselves. We're having that flow through us. So we're out there trying to absorb and have it flow through us to others.
Okay, so improvement nerds aren't know-it-alls, or individuals who are going to come in and prescribe, aren't prescriptive. Maybe that's what I was going for. They aren't prescriptive, right? They're not, an improvement nerd's not telling them what they should do, but an improvement nerd is finding a way to lead the team and those people through discovery, because oftentimes the answer to the problem exists in someone's head. And they just need to have that idea embraced and supported and by maybe an external force or factor that really brings it to the surface. So I like what you're saying, and I agree that is a very effective way to go about supporting organizational change. Is us as improvement nerds, we're a third-party consultant that comes in our years of existence. Green Dot's about to be 8 years old, and you're about to hit your 2-year milestone. In all of our engagements, we've never come in and given an organization an answer, but always followed the process of cultivating the people who do the work to improve that work, and the results follow thereafter.
Yes.
Okay,
how about you? You have
around in your brain.
What's that?
What else is rattling around in your brain that an improvement nerd isn't or aren't or doesn't? What do you got?
Well, I don't know. I would think maybe the inverse of our first three, really, of what we do, right? It'd be if we do this, then we don't do that. So it's if we think about multiplying and spreading, we're not going to just hoard information. We're not going to keep people from new tools and concepts, but we're gonna share that. And I think how we share that might be a do, but we're not going to just create folks that have the mindset that they'll maintain job security by holding on to a special skill set or special knowledge, and then making them feel like they're going to be just more relevant because they can do this, and not thereby spread to others within the organization. So we're not self-contained.
So I hear a couple things in there that remind me of mentorship I've received as I've grown as an improvement person myself. And one way I heard it was that improvement nerds don't take the credit. The way they said it was, in the team's success, the improvement nerd, the facilitator, takes more than their fair share of the blame, right? Like they're the safeguard. They're the ones that, as the team navigates through uncertainty, it's the improvement nerd that creates that safety to say, let's try something. And if it doesn't work, I'm the one who's going to help us explain why it didn't work and how we're moving forward from there. So they take more than their fair share of the blame and almost none of the credit. So I guess we would say improvement nerds don't hoard. They're not hoarders. They don't naturally want to stand in the spotlight. So they're not attention seeking. For themselves, they want attention to be targeted towards the improvement methodology that occurred behind the scenes, almost like the magic pill that helped bring it all together so that it worked. That's what they're really trying to bring attention to, is not themselves, but they're almost there as a champion of this way of thinking and how it can make such a difference.
Yes.
All right.
I had another one too, but it escaped me. So
well, maybe it'll come back.
It'll come back. Do you have one?
I at this current point, I don't have a third opposite side of the coin as to what an improvement nerd isn't. I don't know. And if I had to pick one out of what they are and what they aren't, like what would be my favorite, it's really hard. I think it's really important for an improvement person to have humility, and when improvement happens is to find a way to shine that light onto the team that made that improvement and the process they use to do such. I think that takes a very unique personality type. So maybe the third one will come to us, but we're going to move on back to our 60 seconds type of explain a key concept or answer a critical question in regards to improvement. So I'm going to ask you a question. Can you explain A3 thinking in under 1 minute?
I hope so. Because I think really A3 thinking was designed with the intent to have brevity to it, right? So A3 is the size of a piece of paper. It's a report meant to tell a story, but it's really there to hone communication skill sets so that we can say what is going on and how we're fixing something in a minute or under a minute. And you do that by, placing what the issue is and how you're fixing it on one side of one sheet of paper, to reference, to consensus build, for collaboration, but ultimately to be able to tell the story quickly and effectively and without any puffery in there. So that would be my 1 minute for A3.
We should find a way to put like a stopwatch up on the screen, like a countdown, a 1 minute countdown. I feel like you got a lot in there, and in all the knowledge you just laid on us, it felt like there was a lot there, but you did it in a small amount of time. So thanks for laying that nugget on us. All right. Process mapping. You and I, we talked about this yesterday, just the activity of mapping anything. We talked about an emerging tool from one of our close friends, culture mapping. And you're like, oh, we got culture mapping, and we got strategy mapping, and we have value stream mapping, and we have journey mapping, we have mapping. So when a team goes through and does mapping, any one of those mapping activities, how does that exercise change the way people think?
I think it helps them get a broader view of what or who is involved with the processes or processes they're working with, to provide a bigger picture. So since we talked about this yesterday, it's just been floating around my mind. And we also had talked about standard work and standard work pieces, and how there's a bunch of different ones, and organizations will pick which ones they want to use to address the 5 W's 1 H. And there's a bunch of different types of maps out there, and I think they all really provide a bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
But who needs to look at which map for what purpose?
Mm-hmm.
So, and they all serve different purposes in my mind, which I think is great. And exposure to that, I think, would really help teams and organizations, before they embark on some type of change, to say, do we need to understand who's going to do what when and grab this map? Do we need to understand from an internal perspective what's going on with our material and information flow? That maybe might be this type of map. Do we need to understand what's going on with our customers and what they see, feel, perceive? And if so, maybe we'll use this type of map. Or is it a group of people that we need to get involved to see directionally where we're headed within an organization? We'll use and choose this type of map. So I, since yesterday, I've been thinking about maps, and would like to dive deeper and further into this. As you can tell, I'm excited. I probably went over 1 minute.
It's easy to do, and I
Yeah.
like the way that question lit you up a little bit. I think you said it's almost like we need a map of the maps, right?
Yeah.
And I would say just the activity of mapping and using any one of those frames of thinking about how work gets done and who that work serves and how that work might change over time. When a team gets involved in process mapping, I think there is a pivotal point that happens, because they are able to think about what they do individually and how they exist in their microcosm, but then zoom out and see how they are a functional part of a bigger system. And I think that gives that person some sense of belonging and some pride in the work that they do, and an opportunity to establish fellowship with the people who do that work alongside them. So I think process mapping, to me, is, yes, important information gathering, but I think it's also waking up the human element of the way the business is running, because without the people who do the work or the people who consume the work, the business is really not relevant.
Right. And I think, I don't know if we've ever been through, and I know personally I haven't gone through any like group mapping exercises where someone didn't have an aha moment, right? Like invariably somebody says, wow, I didn't realize there was so much to this, or I didn't understand before. And so there's light bulbs that go on. And probably that's one of the reasons why, or points to the importance of mapping prior to doing. So, process mapping and maybe value stream mapping are, I think, essential to already have before starting improvement, because you understand your current state and what is actually going on from front to end before you start to maybe tamper with processes in between.
Yeah, I think I'm rekindling my love for mapping.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I and as an improvement person, I think when we think about mapping, it's the facilitation of and the bringing of the multiple minds to the table to articulate the elements of the map. And I think you talked about a lot of different maps that could exist, whether it's strategic in nature and plotting the long-term course of an organization, or studying the experience of the workforce member, studying the experience of the customer. What goes on the map, you can't put anything on that map without involving the people who do that work, and just getting them to participate in that event. It takes some planning. It takes time from the organization to put those people in the room. So they may not always see the value of it. Yeah, at the end, you have this wonderful asset that depicts the way the work is done, or the experience the customer's getting, or even the path that the organization helps take. So that asset's wonderful. But if all we think about is process mapping is about creating this asset, we're really missing the mark, because it's really about connecting the people. And to me, that really is such a pivotal point in the improvement journey, is getting people to understand their part in the system.
Yeah. And I don't think you can do any mapping without some type of Gemba experience, right? So they have to go actually out to where the work occurs or what the customer is experiencing, and step into the shoes. And once they do that, then they're able to just kind of look up from their day to day and what they're in and see what is going on around them. And it helps them understand, like if we optimize this process here, are we sub-optimizing some downstream processes? What effect does that have on the total of the business? So I think that's always exciting for us when we get people out to where the work is done. So if a map is driving that, then that's great. So
I think maybe we can go back to the improvement nerd doesn't improve from behind their desk, right?
Yep.
They're very hands-on, fully immersed in the experience of the people who do the work, consume the work. They're fully immersed in the space where that work is happening. They don't try to dial it in and phone in the facilitation. They put themselves in the thick of what they'll be facilitating, so that they are more connected to it and the people who do it. I think that's been a lot of fun, to take the time to almost go through new employee orientation and do the work, as if it's safe for us to do the work. But there's been many times where you and I and our consulting is, we sat down and we had the people who do the work teach us how to do the work, and we did it alongside them, so that we could understand the work to the point to where we could facilitate changes to it without really disrupting what was special about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so one more answer in 60 seconds, and you probably already know what I'm going to ask you because you already mentioned standard work, but describe standard work in less than a minute.
Well, it's simple yet complex, like everything else. So standard work is the standard approach you take to going about executing the tasks and work steps that you need to perform a job function. And standard work will address, I said quickly, the 5 W's, 1 H, and that's the who, what, when, where, how, and why of what we're doing. And standard work can be deployed for training purposes. So we'll use standard work to train. We'll use standard work in practice. So if there's any questions that might arise because motion is different, time is different between the operation and operators, we might refer back to it. And then also standard work is used for auditing purposes. So as we want to make sure that we have consistent quality outcomes, we're going to reference some standard work and perform audits using that standard work. So multifaceted, there to explain the 5 W's, 1 H, and really to drive out variation within the organization. So if you ever experience any type of variation within your organization, or if you ever experience variation in the outcomes that people deliver to you, the question that we should be asking is, well, what is the standard, or what's the standard work? And if we don't have that, then there's a gap.
Okay, so follow-up question to that. I'm curious now, and we may have to look up some research if anyone's actually explored the true quantifiable answer of this question, is, were all the operators that are employed, that are doing work every day, doing work right now, in countless factories, service organizations, if you could just, I don't know, I'd hate to say as big as our nation, but just the city of Indianapolis, where you and I live, what percent of that workforce is doing work right now without knowing what the standard is?
Majority. How's that? I'll just say, I would say majority. I mean, that doesn't sound good. And people might say, well, I kind of know. I have these steps maybe that I follow, but maybe not a comprehensive deployment of standard work like I was just talking about. I think in my experience, as I've gone into so many different organizations and so many different industries, I've seen it executed really well, maybe at 2. And there's been gaps in all the others. So really the question is why aren't these other organizations engaging? If the majority of them, the organizations out there, aren't deploying standard work, why aren't they doing that? We talked about sustainability early, and I think standard work is one of the keys to having sustainability. So you're not held hostage by those who hoard knowledge within your organization or are the experts, but you're able to disperse that knowledge and abilities. You're able to provide a good on-ramp for new hires. I mean, it helps with engagement. There's so many benefits to it. So the question is maybe why organizations using it, but I think most don't. And if they think they do, we would love to come in and check that out.
Yeah, it's such a head scratcher for me, because for the numerous instances in which people are doing work to which they were not trained on the standard or do not have sufficient documentation, they're still doing the work. And those organizations, by the definition of success those organizations came up with, are being successful. So, like, it just, would they be more successful? Like, that trying to get to the why they haven't made the investments in the standard work, and it's probably because they aren't focusing on all the aspects of the balanced scorecard to quantify their success. Like, so maybe volume driven outcomes of number of sales or profitability of sales right are the key metrics they focus on, and how you go about executing on serving the customers or leveraging, engaging your workforce in the work. If you're not looking at those things, you could be more successful had you zoomed out and looked at the bigger picture, right? So there we have seen countless times where the organization has been successful because they're good at grinding it out. But back to sustainability, grinding it out is not sustainable. I think the workforce psyche is changing, and it's long overdue for it to change. Is that when I go to work, I don't want to just use my hand and my back and be a laborer. I really want to make an impact through my work. And though the generations, I would describe my dad as probably one of those generations who loved the grind. And there probably is some upcoming generations that do love the grind, but I don't think it's for business. It's going to be as easy for them to get people to show up to do work without that person having an opportunity to know what good looks like and to feel invested. And I don't think it's possible for organizations to continue to just grind out their success over the long term.
Yeah, you may catch a flame. You may be able to grind it out for some time. So not to say that you can't be successful without standard work, because maybe the product sells itself or the service is great, because you may have people that deliver great customer service, and you may have hired an expert or two. But when it's time for that expert to retire or they win the lottery, that's when there's exposure to the risk of not having standard and not transferring knowledge.
So your success is not just on the grind, but maybe on heroics. Yeah. Okay. It's just, one of the things that keep me up at night is why is it this way, and what is the wake up call organizations need to realize that the end game isn't being successful now in meeting this year's goals, but really positioning yourselves for long-term sustainability and influence and impact, much more humanistic.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people wrongly assume that's like standard work is, just guardrails
Mm-hmm.
and too much rigidity to a work approach. And I think the opposite. I think I commonly say it's the most loving thing that you can do and provide to the worker. So if you imagine someone coming in new and you're trying to explain what to do, sometimes you're partnered up with someone and they're learning, but they may not have time, they might not have the skills to train. But providing comprehensive standard work, I think, is at least a good start. And then if you're leading and you're not having the outcomes that you desire, you don't have to really point to people, right, and blame people as much. You just go to the people and say, what in this work is lacking? What in our standard work is missing? And how do we update that together so that we get consistent outcomes? And I think that's a way better environment to work in.
I think that would be, I don't know how we as a consulting group, the Green Dot, and us as improvement nerds, how we've tried to really explain the value we bring to our partnerships. And I think that's sustainability is definitely part of it. We return the human aspect of work to the workers. Really, I think what you've hit on here is if someone's doing work without the standard, how connected do they feel to that work? Or do they feel like they're just making it up? And could they feel more comfortable in doing that work had we supported them in a different way? So I think you and I, we talk a lot about good tired and bad tired.
Mm-hmm.
Bad tired is the experience of the person who did not get all the training they needed to be successful, and had felt most of the day they were making things up, or that the work they were doing wasn't as impactful as it could have been. So at the end of the day, they go home, and we describe that as being bad tired. And when you're bad tired at work and you're bad tired at home, that spills over. It can have consequences in your household and in your local community. And I think that ruffles your and I's feathers quite a bit. So when I think about why we exist and what we're trying to create is more good tired in the world, which is the person who does work feels supported to do their best work. And yes, they're spending energy either mentally or physically to perform that work, but in use of that energy, they can see that they're making a difference and feel a sense of pride and excitement about that, and they go home more good tired. So we say good tired at work equals good tired at home. And I think then you act and behave differently in your household and in your community when you're good tired. And that just really has a spillover effect that's nearly impossible to quantify, but is something you and I really hope to achieve through the work we do, is create more good tired in our world.
Absolutely.
I love conversations. This hour went by really fast, and I think we're going to have hopefully some messages that resonate with our improvement nerd audience. So I can't wait to release this to them. For those who have listened to the shorts or those who listened to this whole episode, we'd love for you to engage with us and help us understand what other topics you all want to hear about. And maybe anything we said that you agreed with, or things we said that maybe you didn't agree with. Let's engage in dialogue and, really find ways to leave this world a little bit better than we found it.